Hello and welcome to my presentation on Projectized Organizations. My name is Adam Knighting and I will be walking you through the concepts behind this organizational practice. We'll start by defining what it is, talk about the benefits and the costs, and then talk about a few effective use cases when this would be wise and when it wouldn't be such a good idea. So the first thing we'll start with is what a projectized organization is. This is the best definition I've found. A projectized organization refers specifically to an organizational structure that has been set up in a manner in which the project manager leads the group and in which the project manager has the ultimate authority to make any and all decisions involving the organization. Now what this means is that instead of having to go up to, say, a staff manager or a software development manager or the testing manager, the project manager is the end of the line for the team and the project. And since all work is considered a project, it has its own dedicated team. There is a team for each project, which means there's an individual group targeting the particular task. Now the differences between this and standard functional organizational layouts is, as stated before, you have different functional managers such as testing, software development, design, human resources, and so forth, along with training of management and other things. Whereas in the projectized layout, the project manager has an assortment of staff. We have 4 staff on the left where they would be considered one team working under a project manager. Those 4 would all be under that project manager uniquely and individually, such that they were nowhere else and they didn't have to deal with the additional influence of the outside management. So since this is different in that way, it is often beneficial that these are co-located, such that they're in the same office, that the project managers have a lot of independence and authority, that they don't have to answer to a higher management chain in the same way that you would anticipate it if you were in a functional layout. Also, the team resources are reported directly to the project manager, and they are considered in the hands of the project manager as opposed to being in the hands of the functional managers and loaned or borrowed by the project managers. So let's take a look at the benefits and strengths. 1, you have to go through a lot less red tape. Because you don't have to climb all the way up the ladder, you don't have to deal with the bureaucracy in the same manner. The decision lies with the project manager. And this shielding acts to help unify the team to keep everybody on the same playing field, understanding the same marching orders, and it helps everyone to feel like they actually are making progress. The majority of the deciding power sits with the project manager, which means that in addition to not having to run everything up to get it approved, the project manager actually has the ability to say that they can give you these resources because they have been allocated, they requested it for this project, it belongs to this project until it is done. And since the communication stays internal to the team, that unifies the team as a team. It helps them to be more collaborative, helps them to understand one another and to feel better about working with one another, which improves the work environment. In turn, this has drawbacks. When everybody is assigned strictly to one team, a lot of individuals who could benefit multiple teams are simply allowed to access one, reducing their ability to actually benefit the company. Also, because this is a team-based layout on the project scale, when the project is over, work is not necessarily assured or guaranteed. It's not as secure, and you don't feel as safe in your employment position when it's truly pure projectized organizational based. Also, every time you have new team members, you have to train them particularly to the practices of your team. And when team members are rotated out at the end of a project, all the work that went into training them is lost in reference to your team. So there's less drive and benefit to putting into good training for your employees under the project manager. Because of the inefficient use of resources, these people that are not actually helping as many teams as they could, and resources that have been strictly allocated to a project, there's actually a higher risk in the earlier phases because of the monetary investment that goes in before return shows. And there's a practice or a study that shows that when management is given increased power, they use less practical leadership skills and more political skills, hurting the team, project, and organization alike. Which leads us to the consideration of when to actually use this. It is effective to use projectized organizational strategies when your organization is large enough to support a multiple team environment, when you have small teams that are all geolocated in the same area, when your organization has a strong and gifted leader set who have been trained and actually are invested in improving the workplace environment, empowering individuals who are not driven to make the management choices better for a project is not going to help a company. And also, a management training program needs to exist that is reasonably successful in producing management needed, meaning you need to be able to actually know that the project managers you're putting in place are performing according to the standards that you have set. And so that is actually a very important part to this particular practice. The second side, ineffective, is if your organization is so small that there's only really one team. If you really only have one decision maker, this is not the practice for you. Also, in organizations where the process of developing software has not been solidly laid out, such as those that have not yet, or well, theoretically have not yet reached CMM level 2, this is not a replacement for that. If those practices are not in place, then breaking your team up into separate teams and expecting successful software development is not going to turn the company around. In the case that your labor force is already stretched extremely thin, adding this sort of practice in place will make it so that those individuals who would be able to help across the board are now restricted to an individual location and team, which will make it even harder to complete the tasks needed. And distributed organizations have a difficult time performing the communication necessary for these small projects when the team is distributed over large geographical areas. This has been my presentation on projectized organizational strategies. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something about software management, and thank you very much for listening.